Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we're going to be sitting down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Flying Down to Rio, directed by Thornton Freeland. We have Body Double by Brian De Palma. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind by George Clooney. We have newly released Orion in the Dark by Sean Sharmatz. And finally, Lisa Frankenstein, directed by Zelda Williams. It is going to be an awesome show, folks. Stay tuned and enjoy. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Zombie boy, how's it going?
It's going okay for me. How was your week of movies, Vin?
Our week was pretty good. I think it was a little bit all over the place, but mostly because I feel like Lisa Frankenstein kind of throws things off. It throws a wrench in the works.
Well, Lisa, yeah, we do have. I wouldn't say a wrench in the works. I would say we are in our January, February schlock-ish area.
For real.
And then we have Flying Down to Rio from 1933.
Second Fred Astaire movie ever. This is the earliest Fred Astaire movie I've watched.
Yeah.
This is earlier than Top Hat, which is always referred to as like his first like really big role.
Right, and he's so young, looking it's crazy.
Yeah.
And then finishing up our Brian De Palma study as well.
Thank God. I'll tell you. I mean, I would have to probably look back and see all of the director studies or the writer studies that we've done. I think De Palma is definitely the least successful so far.
Yeah, it's weird to have him do Scarface.
I know.
It's shocking.
That's the
almost.
anomaly. That is the anomaly for sure.
And then we have Orion in the Dark, which was on my kind of looking forward to in 2024 because it's written by Charlie Kaufman.
Yep, absolutely.
Which we'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, I kind of like this. It's a different week. It's kind of all over the place, which I like. Mm-hmm. Well, let's get into it. Yeah.
Oh, what?
You have any opening notes?
I was going to say, we could talk about Super Bowl trailer talk, and I literally have like one thing to say. So.
Okay, go ahead.
I would just say I'm not the biggest Deadpool fan. I'm not the biggest Ryan Reynolds fan.
Yeah, for sure.
No stranger to the listeners at home.
Goes for me too. That's podcast wide.
Yeah, that's a podcast meme. No good on Ryan Reynolds. But I think Deadpool and Wolverine has some potential. All right. My only argument here is that it is the only MCU movie coming out proper from Marvel this year. The only one.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that.
I'm hoping maybe one, quality over quantity.
Right.
For one. And maybe we get that CGI budget figured out, Marvel. But two, I mean, I definitely am nervous about the Disneyification of, this comedic style that Ryan Reynolds has. But let me tell you, I think if there was a concept to work, it's Deadpool getting pulled around and being in a very meta story. That is Deadpool to a T in the comic books.
And, people like the first two.
Yeah.
And honestly, I wasn't aware that it was the only movie this year, but it makes sense that they're now, it doesn't come out until, is it fall?
I think August. Yeah.
Okay, so the fact that we're getting hit with trailers already now, it's like, okay.
The hype machine. Well, the thing is, there were so many leaked leaked photos online of Hugh Jackman in the suit and whatnot. So
I will say this is the same thing that happened with Dial of Destiny last year.
Oh, really?
I think the trailer was out for Super Bowl, and then we saw what happened there. I think it's safe to say, hopefully, we'll get a better movie than that.
hope so too.
But
that's really my only thought. My only the other notes I said Wicked looks bad, and I could care less about Quiet Place Day 1. So that's the end of trailer talk, I guess.
There's one other, Twisters.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Okay.
I didn't see the video.
It looks. We're gonna see.
Yeah.
We're gonna see how the CGI is.
Why is
there's some
Glenn Powell getting pushed so much? I mean,
he's a handsome fella, and
you swear.
and he's good at acting. I think. I know it's funny how much he's taking off.
Yeah.
And I think he's like 35 or like between like 35 and 38.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird that it's happening now because I feel like he's getting the Tom Holland / Timothy Chalamet.
That's a great
treatment.
Great read.
When they went through their, you know what I mean?
Yep.
With like
definitely the Tom Holland side of that.
They each had like a 2 or 3 year period where it's like they're the guy.
Yep.
But in their younger 20s or mid 20s, this Glenn Powell's getting it a little bit later, but he was slowly coming up and he was getting more recognized. Then Top Gun happened. Now Anyone But You is still kind of just has this little cult following and everything.
Right.
And he's getting some serious stuff now.
Well,
he looks good in it. I don't know about the main actress, and I don't know about the CGI in Twisters.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
I forget if we said it on the podcast, but I've never seen Twisters. But then I was trying to remember. I was like, I think I've seen Twisters because
Twister.
Right, Twister. Because I remember some device that they release like bubbles or something. Like that. Okay, so maybe I have seen it.
And there was a shout out to that in the trailer as well.
Oh, really? Okay,
that's the CGI that I'm worried about.
Oh.
But Glenn Powell looks, I feel like he's just, they needed to get a new Ryan. I feel like they needed a new Ryan Gosling.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Gosling's getting a little older now.
Oh, I've been ringing that bell since he was cast as Ken. I mean, the dude looks geriatric sometimes.
I am
with that bleach blonde hair. No thanks.
I do. Glenn Powell, I get a little bit of a young Brad Pitt vibes from.
Really?
His acting isn't there.
I'm not
Brad
sold
Pitt's
yet.
a really good actor.
I won't trash him, but I'm not sold yet. I'm not there yet.
I'm not there yet either. I just think that's the box he's being pushed into.
Oh, marketing wise,
yeah.
Sure.
But anyway, we'll see. Twister. So that was also another thing where it's like, okay, it's real. I don't know. We'll see.
It's real. It's real. They put an S on it.
It's no Lisa Frankenstein, I'm sure. But okay, we're going to jump back to 1933, Vin. We're continuing with our Fred Astaire study, which is the longest ongoing study.
It's Fred Astaire month. You know what I mean?
So
February.
This is Flying Down to Rio, directed by Thornton Freeland.
Yeah, we were saying pre-podcast, folks. Thornton Freeland. Can you think of a more 1933 name than Thornton Freeland?
I'm a fan. I'm
gonna name my first child Thornton.
I was going to say how many Thorntons were born in 2024 and 2023. Flying Down to Rio, Vin. How did we like one of his earliest roles?
We go from one of the latest Fred movies from last week to one of the earliest. 1933 marks 2 years before even the earliest films I've personally seen Astaire in, and really is the last on my list for iconic dances, because Fred is in a lot of movies. He's not always dancing, and that's really what I want to kind of capture for February, being a study of rom-coms before rom-coms as we know them, and for iconic dancing on screen in these kind of musicals.
That was the impetus of it. I mean, really, this was one of our first studies that we have done. Like, this is pre-podcast.
Yeah, pre-podcast.
You started on Fred.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Always kind of enjoying his films, but then, like, never getting around to watching a lot of films. So,
and also
having that put aside.
I mean, I don't think most people have actually sat down and watched a Fred Astaire thing. I think if they saw him on screen, they would kind of maybe recognize that number, that number. So it's nice also to, have the red string in the back of your bedroom. Helping us out where to put all this stuff, you know what I mean? All these Fred clips of the actual films that they belong into.
Absolutely. And we'll talk in just a second about what next week will be in lieu of the accursed Madam Web. Speaking of red strings, but this really does mark the 18th Astaire film we've reviewed, either pre-podcast or otherwise.
Wow, I didn't know.
And while certainly there's a lot more to his career, I really say, I confidently say, we've covered nearly all of the best. And next week we will be releasing our Fred Astaire, Essential Fred Astaire special, that we will hopefully talk about some of those iconic dances that people can recognize just by the look of it.
But ones that
bridge the gap.
Films that we have not yet covered.
Right, covered pre-podcast, and rated
Yeah.
on the site if anyone wants to be a sleuth out there. But for the most part, yeah, nothing. In fact, over the course of the podcast, anytime I've come across a Fred Astaire movie that I think has been a contender, I've actually put it aside. And there's really only one that is maybe in the running for that.
Gotcha.
So, this movie falls in the golden age, though, of Fred Astaire and his many musical comedies paired up with the equally sensational dancer Ginger Rogers. These early films, they always cast them in showbiz or some type of performing orchestra as a logical reason for having a story centered around music, which in the wave of musicals I really do appreciate. It's a minor compliment to these movies, but I would love if in these wave of new musicals that there was a logic to why they're singing, because it works in these old ones, because it's like, yeah, they're performing, you know.
That goes. I wonder when that really died. But that has not been that way in a long time.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Do you think the remake? Do you think Hairspray with Travolta? Do you think that even had that formula? That was a big movie when it came out.
I've never seen Hairspray, believe it or not. But don't they sing on like a contestant game show type of thing?
I don't.
Oh,
You're
okay,
the wrong guy.
You're the one.
Well, I know.
Stabbing in the dark.
But you know what I mean? Like that whole thing of it's a musical and there's actually elements in the film that make sense to have dancing and music.
Yes, yeah.
You know, my favorite, which is White Christmas.
right.
It's about a music show going on.
Exactly.
So there's been, and I think that's why I have such a visceral
hatred
and reaction, a vomitous kind of reaction to modern day musicals.
You're right there.
Because as
I
soon
would
as
say good 50% of America on musicals.
Okay, good.
Maybe more.
Well, don't forget. I mean, I refuse, and I know I refuse to see La La Land.
Right.
Haven't really sat down and watched it because as soon as it starts, as soon as the tune starts, it's almost like I get blush red, and it's like I gotta walk out of here. I'm embarrassed for everybody involved. But anyway, so that's what we're dealing with, something that actually makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a minor compliment, but one that came up, especially in the wave of reviewing these musicals. And again, my latest beef of the Broadway bland type of stylings to it. But what surprised me here is both Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire this is so early in their career that they are only supporting characters to a much larger love story that I would say held up pretty well. But once again, like Finian's Rainbow, we're at the bottom of the barrel of finding it's Fred specifically, or it's Fred and Ginger specifically, them only being on the sidelines. In Flying Down to Rio, a dapper band leader played by Gene Raymond falls in love with a gorgeous Brazilian aristocrat played by Dolores Del Rio. The only issue is that their new employer happens to be her fiancé, putting Fred in the middle of breaking up things before they're kicked out of Brazil entirely. I would say, believe it or not, some of the comedy beats really held up here. There was a solid joke that kind of felt right out of Airplane in how it was set up.
All right.
I was really surprised by it, and it's about them being stranded on an island, and then it turns out to be a golf course. It just felt, I don't know, the timing of it just felt very Airplane. And let me tell you, the type of semi-marketing there is to the concept of flying in 1933 in this film. 1933 flying looks terrifying. This would not ever... I mean, I would never step foot in a plane if this was like my first experience.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point.
They have to fit a piano into like a biplane. It's a biplane. It's not like this is like Wright Brothers shit right here. They have to fit a piano in one point, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's fine. Only 2 people can fit in." Man, terrifying. Absolutely.
Weight's
terrifying.
a big deal. You got to be concerned about weight and distribution.
Right. It's unreal. I would say my main problem with this one is just not enough dancing. The first dance sequence we get is about 45 minutes in, right in line with Fred and Ginger only being supporting roles. I would say, dancing-wise, tap and Latin, I would say, are awkwardly separated at times. And this is something that we'll see Fred actually grow to conquer in 1953's The Bandwagon, and very successfully. It's weird. They almost put the Latin dancers separate and then Tap. With Fred and Ginger on its own type of platform. We do get some very crazy, elaborate sequences. I mean, I don't know what the budget was on this back in 33, but it's just like, why did they put so much money towards these sets? It's really elaborate sets. We get a rotating 8-piano octagon that is a stage they dance
hell
on.
Yeah.
It's wild.
That's awesome.
And like they're all playing. I mean, maybe they're not really playing. They're probably not really playing. But like, it's like, who thought of that in the concept art stage? Like, yeah, we're going to put 8 pianos and it's going to be the stage.
Like you said, that's golden age, man. That's just like, hey, let's just do it.
Let's do it. Right. And of course, the title track, which is accompanied by the insane idea of dancers strapped to the biplanes flying around. There's a point that a dancer falls, which is like played for a comedic beat, and she is caught by another plane. Absolutely insane.
I love it. I love it.
It's just very, very, very cheesy, very campy, but like very enjoyable. To be fair, when I'm looking at these dance sequences, I was a little starved because I wanted more of it. There's really only these 2 major ones here that are worth it. So overall, a very cute movie. But doesn't beat out some of the later all-time greats. I mean, even later, just a few short years from nearly everyone in this production. There are even a lot of supporting comedic characters. The butler, for instance, stays with Fred and Ginger for like the next 6 films. So we see this kind of as a ramp into what we know those 2 legends and dancing legends to be, but still worth checking out. And if anything, to be surprised by how much the comedy and the film has held up despite its very, very old age. We're going to go ahead and give Flying Down to Rio, 1933, a 64.
Okay, a 64% is really not that bad.
Yeah, I thought it held up more than I thought, and I think it's in the jokes.
That's a good movie. That's a good movie.
Right.
Wow. Okay, and it's only an hour and 29, so which is nice, breezy.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love to see it.
Okay, so that is. So is that how many more Freds? That's it.
That's it
until.
Well, next week, the elephant in the room is Madam Web.
Right.
It's getting very bad reviews. It's getting worse reviews than Morbius. I don't want to watch it.
Okay.
I also don't really want to watch this Bob Marley biopic, a music biopic coming out. So next week, we will be doing the Essential Fred Astaire. In that episode, we're going to talk about what's going to happen for February's to come, since we're
closing the book.
Yeah. Close to the book on Fred.
I love that.
Yeah.
And by the way, just real quick on Madam Web, it is not a Marvel Disney proper release.
No,
That's
it's
the Sony
Marvel.
Pictures.
Yeah, which is basically only Spider-Man. So
And Morbius.
Spider-Man. Same with Kraven the Hunter coming out. Still a Spider-Man rogue.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and right, that's why we get the Venom movies from them.
Exactly.
I
exactly.
see. Okay.
So, and for what it's worth, Sony can produce gold. The Spider-Verse movies arguably are some of the best superhero movies to come out, period.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Can be super trash.
yeah, they do not know when to quit. This Madam Web movie looks god-awful, and much like Blue Beetle, I have less than zero interest.
Well, I don't think it's gonna do well. People clamoring for it.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's I like the idea of we're gonna have a big bash with Fred.
Yeah.
Close the book on him, say goodnight, and then that's it.
Say goodnight. Hang up the tap shoes.
Speaking of finishing up a film study,
Yeah.
We are jumping to 1984. This film is Body Double by Brian De Palma. So
Yep.
the whole idea between this, because he made 4 films in consecutive years, 81, 82, 83, 84.
Yep.
We did Dressed to Kill, then Blowout.
Yep.
We did Scarface, and we're back here at Body Double.
Yep.
And I say back here because we are really in the same vein as what I think Blowout
Yeah.
and Dressed to Kill. I watched this as well, so it'll be fun to get into it. Just want to make one note as well.
Sure.
It was after he made the first 3 that we just discussed, Dressed to Kill, Blowout, and Scarface. After the success of Scarface is actually when he got a major 3-picture deal with, I forget who it was, but one of the major studios.
Sure.
Basically, he set up a 3-picture contract, and this was the first of that.
Yeah.
But I really feel like it's in the same vein as his first two.
Yeah. And to be fair, in not so many years, he does do The Untouchables then, which we covered on an early podcast episode. I remember, I haven't listened to that review in a very long time since posting it. I remember complaining that the violence wasn't where I wanted it to be. Maybe it was good that he was breaking away from the violence he was known for. So
why don't you set it up for us today?
He's exhausted,
and then
already.
we can toss it back and forth.
I'll tell you what, Tom. Next, you come up with the next director study.
I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad at you.
I know. Okay. It's more so. I don't know. Maybe I need a different judgment on where we should go next. A little bit more marketable than Brian De Palma. Yeah, Body Double. It is the conclusion of De Palma's 4-year run. But a lot smaller scale than the mega hit that Scarface was last week. We are back to his wheelhouse of semi-erotic thrillers, and much like I praised the writing in Blowout, the story has a real production spin that feels authentic because he is a professional in filmmaking and writing about a filmmaking story, ultimately. The story is about a struggling actor living in Hollywood, played by a relative no-name, Craig Wasson. Christ, his IMDb or TB pick is the shot from the movie. That's
literally.
his photo, yeah. Out of a job and living on someone else's dime, he becomes obsessed with a woman in a gross peeping Tom scenario. That one really lost me early. I understand that a concept in horror and thriller is that sometimes your main character is not going to be relatable. Sometimes your main character is being set up as someone as a pincushion for evil things to happen to them. This one lost me real early though, because I just feel like the tone of this character was like, yeah, he's an all right guy, and I'm watching this, I'm like, this guy's like gross, like this is a scumbag.
Yeah, it progressively gets there.
Yeah,
because at the beginning you're just like, oh, he's just a guy,
right?
Meets this other guy. Now he's doing this, and it's just like, oh, I can see that, but it continues to get more and more creepy.
Right. So his actions are fueled by a false sense of protection, and when a grisly stalker starts going after his quote-unquote girl, he spirals deeper into his own delusion. So deep, in fact, that he starts looking for his fantasy in a porn actress that is a near-identical body double. What complicates all of this is Wasson's character suffers from a debilitating syndrome that is mysteriously triggered. Sometimes it's claustrophobia, sometimes it's psychological, but intentionally a mystery to us as the viewer. That setup right there, cinephiles at home will instantly recognize this element as either a nod or a blatant ripoff of the 1958 classic Hitchcock's Vertigo.
Yeah.
Identical, both in how it's staged as almost a secondary plot line in the thriller.
Yeah.
And just like how it's not really explained and just like puts him on his ass, every now and again.
Yeah, I think it was, from the get-go, I think it's pretty clear, like whatever his condition type of deal.
Right.
What movie did we just watch that it was, that's right, it was My Own Private Idaho, that somebody had a weird condition.
Oh, narcolepsy.
That kind of popped up here and there.
Also very tone deaf.
To add to the film.
In the context of that film.
It's funny how much this film is so compared to Hitchcock, or that's always brought up. Again, doing some research on the film or just seeing what other critics at the time thought about it. The praise for this film and the linking of Hitchcock.
Yeah. Isn't that nuts?
I don't know Hitchcock, and I'm hoping like this year I want to tackle
absolutely
just for me and just get my feet in there a little bit.
Yep.
I'm sure Brian De Palma loves film. I know there's callbacks from it. It's a bit of an homage in certain ways, but also, I don't know. This is more so.
This is almost slasher schlock. Like this was like a gore film.
To me, it's not him working off. Yeah, it's not working off of Hitchcock. It's him working off of Dressed to Kill. It's the same movie in like so many aspects. I could connect these two.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Related to kind of an adult industry. Yeah, absolutely.
And as far as this claustrophobia tax that he would get, I just think. To me, I haven't seen Vertigo. It's probably closer to bring it up again. It's probably closer to the drinking problem that he has in Airplane than
awesome.
than a Vertigo thing as far as what comes up in a film.
A connection I can safely say probably no one has made in the history of the human race, connecting Body Double to flying to Rio. That's awesome.
Not flying to Rio, airplane.
Oh, but through
yes.
airplane. Airplane is the degree between
the conduit.
Yeah.
But I'm taking over the review already. I cut you off where you were going anyway.
No. If anything, I want to go with what you're saying. This is where when we covered
Dress to Kill.
Dress to Kill. Thank you. This is where we covered Dress to Kill, and in the initial positioning of why we're going a stage past Scarface, Body Double is referred to as like his best work, even among Scarface. And I was like, what?
No, there's no way.
Yeah.
And the guy did Untouchables. We did a couple stuff in the past, like even last year, the first year of the podcast as well, with him. This movie, it is so much Dress to Kill. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, like 1-to-1 type stuff. Not exactly the same scene, but it's like, oh, we're doing the exact same thing,
doing
actually.
It again. Yeah. Maybe a little bit bigger budget,
Constantly. Yeah. And it's not even that big of a budget. It, to me, felt like it's the same formula. We are in a single town, oftentimes in the same exact rooms.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just crazy that we went from Scarface back to this.
Yeah, that's true. I know. And that's where I say, 3 years, does Untouchables. I mean, Oscar nominated and whatnot.
Yeah.
So he's not confined just to these movies. But I feel like in all my research, it was pointing towards this 4-year stretch, and just very, very disappointing with it. But like you said, Tom, later on in the year, we will be getting around to some of those classics, like what this is being compared to with Hitchcock. But I need to stress that De Palma's ultra-violence and vulgarity especially makes this feel closer to an average slasher already played out by 1984. Already done to death. Especially post Friday the 13th and the early waves of mid-70s slashers.
And I didn't find this ultra gory or ultra blood splatter type stuff, or an old splatter film as we learned. Yeah. That's kind of what they used to be called.
Yeah. I think it's just more so the not in a prudish way, but like the exploitation of sexuality, the vulgarity.
Right. Okay.
Of it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then on top of that, he's not afraid to show some blood when it does matter.
Right. Yeah.
One aspect I actually kind of enjoyed here was the music done by Pino Donaggio, being a shared composer on Dress to Kill. It is an equal mix of very deliberate Hitchcock-style strings for tension, while still having that emerging 80s synth that, alongside directors, composers like John Carpenter, really starts to take shape middle of the decade. We really start to get what the 80s is remembered for in these type of moments. The movie also features the massively popular song Relax by the real band Frankie Goes to Hollywood in the movie. Though, if I'm being honest, it just kind of made me want to go watch Zoolander. So, gotta say though, Tom, I'm sure glad this De Palma study is over. I'm done with it. Not that anyone's really digging up the issue of who is in this category of new wave 70s directors. I think De Palma is low on the list, despite having some iconic works like Scarface. I think my initial curiosity is ultimately what I'm walking away with, scratching my head at why anyone would put him alongside Scorsese and Spielberg. For this movie's case, I feel like it really does land smack dab middle of the road, equally having the frustrating plot and acting performances, but also having a decent bite that is from the alleged master of suspense. We're going to go ahead and give Body Double 1984 a 52.
A 52%. Yeah. Yep. I would
Too
completely agree.
generous
I'm not
or
going to. No. That's right where you belong. I'm not going to give a two shoes.
Okay.
It's so unshocking at this point when you watch it, and just like the sexuality of it, the sexiness of it, even
it's
the
almost
turns.
overkill.
Right, the stalking aspect, the creeping scenes, kind of. It's just like, this is De Palma. Been here, seen it before.
Right, and
none of it is shocking. And the only shocking part is that, to me, it doesn't feel like I said, it doesn't feel like a big film.
Right.
And it feels like a guy who's just starting out. This seems like a second film for a big-time director.
Sure.
And it's not.
Right.
This is after Scarface. And I get this year after year after year. Huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
Huge accomplishment.
Right.
That being said, nothing is new. and it's highly unimpressive.
Right. It really is like you didn't
It's
watch
not a
Blowout.
good film. It's not even like enjoyable to watch. Again,
I'm with you on the enjoyment aspect because again, I think the main character lost me entirely. Also, I guess maybe out of curiosity, this stars a very young Melanie Griffith. I think that's her name.
Okay.
Dakota Johnson's mother, connected to Madam Web.
Oh, really? That's hilarious. And she plays Holly, kind of the main.
Yes. Well, the body double.
Yes.
That's the porn actress.
Not
he
as
finds.
annoying as Nancy Allen.
Oh, definitely not.
But close.
Right.
But a little bit close. But in fact, our mate Craig Wasson playing Jason is it's pretty. It's actually pretty kind of annoying.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
He's like a whinier Bill Maher.
Oh,
Yeah, he looks like Bill Maher.
I was gonna say, why can't I think of his name? The dude.
Jeff Bridges?
Yeah, I was gonna say Discount Pin Jeff Bridges.
No, not a chance. His voice, maybe a little bit actually.
Right.
He does kind of have this like I don't know, like goopier back of his kind of throat.
That's a great description. Goopier. I love it.
But I didn't like this film. I didn't hate it.
Okay.
It's just like, oh, here we are with our good friend De Palma again.
I know.
It's just like, oh, you would do that. You would make this film. It's just like, here we are in one of his sexual fantasies in the back of his head.
I know. I think he just doesn't know how to write, like, not that many people do, but write like a prostitute character. I think my issue with Nancy Allen in the first two films, and then my issues here is that maybe he just doesn't know how to write females, or I don't know.
I think maybe the issue is he's continuing to write prostitute characters, and it's just like, just do something different.
Yeah.
It really points to Scarface, thinking that Oliver Stone is doing the real work there.
Yes,
He's the one who wrote the screenplay.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine how much he set up of why that movie is as big and as well kind of just thought out it is.
Absolutely.
You know? Again,
On top of the shoulders that's on with OG Scarface, but 100% agree. Maybe the takeaway with this study is that De Palma, good on the lens, not on the pen.
Yeah, and I don't think it's that great on the lens either, but yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite, in fact, I think we've come to the point where my favorite Dennis Franz is the actor who was in these three films.
Oh, yeah.
But Dennis Franz, who played the dirty cop, kind of the good cop, but also bad cop in Dress to Kill. You said he just played a flat-out bad guy in Blowout. And now he played the director in this. I just love his acting.
Right.
I'm a fan of this guy now. So I'm excited to see him in a De Palma
He's
film.
De Palma's Leo, basically.
I wish. Okay, I think that's enough for that. 52 for Body Double. It makes perfect sense. So if you want to see all the De Palma stuff, make sure to check out the website then, because we do have a decent selection of him at this point now.
Absolutely. It was good to kind of, get that done, because I didn't want to have that, he comes out with, I didn't want to ever return to it again.
I'm sure we'll hit him up something in the future a little bit. He does do some big pictures through there. He weaves in and out. Anyway, we're going to jump to 2002 now. I didn't watch this film.
Oh, really?
I love the idea behind it.
Right. I
I
thought this was going to work for you.
It seems really up my alley.
Yep.
I have to say. It's Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, and this is directed by George Clooney. His first film he directed?
Yes, very first.
All right, directorial debut then for Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, starring our boy in Argyle last week,
Sam Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell.
Yep.
So we both like Sam Rockwell. I have to say, something that was turning me off a little bit. I'm not the biggest Drew Barrymore fan. I can't stand Drew Barrymore.
You're taking all my notes, like every line.
The best part of one of the commercials for the Super Bowl ads was the Paramount Plus one, which they came out a week before I sent it to you.
Sure.
But it was Patrick Stewart telling Drew Barrymore to, like, shut her face. He's going to shut your face, Barrymore, or something like that. Very enjoyable.
Very enjoyable.
Regardless,
Very satisfying.
Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. I love the loose kind of connective tissue with Orion in the Dark.
Yes.
So it's kind of cool that we're covering it this week, but set the film up a little bit. Tell us about it, and how'd you like it?
Well, I really did enjoy this film. I enjoyed it on a lot of different levels. This was enjoyable to tackle this week, both because I never saw it, and it fits perfectly into our new animated release. My brother-in-law, John, and I have been tackling these Charlie Kaufman scripts over the last year or so. The two of them this week week being much easier than what we're used to.
Yeah.
These were not really like mind-twisting type of scripts that he's known for. Like we said already, directorial debut for George Clooney, coming out in 2002. It also acts as a fun reunion for a lot of Ocean's 11 talent here, with a handful of guest spots, and that's primarily where I was like, Tom's got
This movie is for me.
Yeah. It's like, this is the sweet spot, And maybe more than anything, folks, it is a bit of a redemption slot for our boy Sam Rockwell after last week's blunder with Argyle, and honestly, to see, for my own curiosity, how a spy action comedy might be done right. My takeaway with that last piece is that this kind of separates it. When it's a spy action movie, it's a spy action movie. When it's a comedy, it's a comedy. So not a great blending, but definitely a redemption for Rockwell, because I really did enjoy this performance quite a bit. I want to start with the summary right away, because the subject of the story might be just the most interesting part. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is the closest thing we might get to a biopic for TV host and producer Chuck Barris. If that name doesn't sound familiar, he was the creator of many hit TV shows and kind of the golden age of television.
Yeah, real-life guy, yeah.
Yeah. Many hit TV shows like The Newlywed Game, The Dating Game, and even hosted and created The Gong Show, all formats in TV that are still, iterated upon still today. Sam Rockwell certainly embodies Chuck's party attitude and even comes pretty close to looking like him, but the story goes much further than just a simple game show. The title of this movie comes directly from Chuck's autobiography, in which he reveals the communist-obsessed CIA of the 60s trained and recruited him as a spy. The real dude. So what this movie proposes is that Chuck Barris, a TV game show host, was a spy on the side. And that was just like, what? Like, is this true? Is this movie playing into a joke? It's Charlie Kaufman. Is he playing a joke on us?
Right. Well, the real guy, like you said, is based on an autobiography.
Right.
The real Chuck Barris said it's absolutely true.
Oh,
now there's
he did. I'm sure
there's a lot of people that say it's bullshit.
All right, including the CIA.
Right.
Which
yeah,
is
but that's what they would say.
Exactly. And thus why this movie was so enjoyable. This was one hell of a rabbit hole for research, and I think the consensus of this, is it true or is it false, falls into one of three camps. Chuck is absolutely full of shit, and he made it all up. And most notably, the CIA is the one saying that. Secondly, some of it happened, confirmed by his peers in the TV industry and citing long absences in Chuck's career. And third, all of it is true, which is by far the most interesting angle for at least making this into a story, making this into a movie, and the route that the film takes. The real artistry here is taking this story and layering it into the psychology of the character. Chuck has this obsession with self-worth. Posing these spy stories as possible delusions or possible truth is what the movie is all about, and I really just found it such an enjoyable kind of mystery to untangle, even though the film doesn't really commit to a side.
So we're not even, and that's the real story of the film. So we're not following this guy in this going from TV to producer, living a CIA life. It's more so unraveling, is this guy for real or not?
Yes. Now, the actual moments of the film, I would say is 50-50. It's a little bit of TV show nostalgia, TV production nostalgia, which I'll get into in just a second, and real spy action.
Gotcha.
And that's where I mean like the spy action comedy juggling act. It's pretty separate. When we're on the TV side, it's all fun and games.
Right.
Spy side, it is like an espionage action. So, folks, as a result of this, I felt that this was a perfect fit for Kaufman's unique approach to storytelling. And while it may be tame in comparison to, once again, the mind-bending films we've covered from him in the past, it still has his fingerprint as something clearly he was passionate enough about to put his name on. And early in his career as well, no less George Clooney. What I really enjoyed the most, though, was that TV production aspect here. I felt the TV history side of the story was more interesting than the spy story. No less the entire time saying, no way. You know what I mean? And then not really getting confirmation after research either. This worked in the same way that like Being the Ricardos works, or even like a Mad Men, where the cogs behind the scene are interesting to unpack. And that's where I would actually recommend this movie most, for if you have an interest in these kind of golden age TV production.
Yeah, he captures it pretty well.
Exactly.
Clooney, okay.
Clooney as a Nepo baby, references his mom, references, the NBC tours that were part of the culture at the time. So, there's a lot there. Acting-wise, I already mentioned Sam Rockwell's a nice fit. I felt a little bit of a disadvantage to call heads or tails if he's doing a good job, because I've never seen The Gong Show. I've never seen Chuck Barris, besides some videos online.
That's where I kind of like Sam Rockwell. Like, I haven't seen this. I don't know the original guy, Chuck Barris, or anything like that, what he looks like, how he sounds. But he's very good. It's tough that when you're watching him act, it's tough not to see Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
And think about...
Because he's been him for the whole career. He is Sam Rockwell.
Right, exactly. So when he's in, 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, he's just Sam Rockwell playing a dumb cop, but he's great, and you love to see him in the role.
Yeah.
When you see him in Moon, it's like, oh, it's Sam Rockwell stuck in... I don't see
like
him as
thriller,
the character a little bit.
Yeah.
And most of all, when you watch him in Vice... He's great at George W. Bush, but not because he's doing a great George W. Bush impression. It's more so he is doing, I forget the word, there's actual technical term. We're not trying to do a full-on impersonation, but you're really just trying to do almost a representation.
Sure.
And Sam Rockwell's George Bush, it's funny because it's not good.
Right,
it's not Josh Brolin, who does a phenomenal Bush. But in his own way, he makes it great. And that's why I like Sam Rockwell, because he can be weird. And he's very much himself, or his own acting style, or just him. I see him, not so much the character, but it works.
And I think a key piece is understanding that he's mostly in comedic roles for these things, as much as Vice.
That's a good point.
I don't know, flirts the line with not being comedic.
Yeah, it's comedic.
But yeah, I think he's always... That's a great point about it's not trying to go for laser perfect. He's trying to go for an approximation, or what we remember them to be.
Right. He's not going for a complete body double of the original guy.
Nice.
But
we're stringing them along this week. They're all connected.
But I can see whether he's just like the original guy or not. I can see how much of it's still fun to watch him personify this guy.
Yeah.
We don't need always a Johnny Depp Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas going as Hunter S. Thompson.
Sure. That's a great callback too. And for what it's worth, like, Barris was like a party animal. He was almost like a Dean Martin type, especially in his persona on screen.
Right. Okay.
The Gong Show was basically America's Got Talent or the X Factor. In that it's like usually celebrities or a panel, and it's a talent show. And they're going to cut it short. I feel like Rockwell's just able to get up on there and have a fun time, and that's basically what Barris was doing.
Right.
What was surprising, I was waiting for kind of like some sort of alcohol thread or substance abuse thread, and it never really comes. And maybe just because Barris didn't put it in the autobiography, he wanted to say he was being a spy. I would say, despite my deep hatred of Drew Barrymore, she really isn't bad here, and I feel like she really fits into the role well. And George Clooney is pulling double time directing, but his acting, I feel like, takes the cake, wins out.
Clooney.
Yeah. He plays the CIA agent that gets him into it, and he's just cool as ice. He's rocking this mustache.
Okay, all right, that's good to hear.
The salt and pepper look.
Because you're not the biggest Clooney guy.
I'm really
neither
not.
am I, but...
Yeah, but I feel like this worked, again, in this small bubble of like 2001 to 2003 maybe, that it's just, I don't know.
So he's Danny Ocean as a spy,
Exactly.
which I'm more than okay with.
Yeah, bingo. So that's where it was very enjoyable. What I'm going to end with, though, is Clooney's directing. I'm not so sure about, especially because this is a little bit of an anomaly in the type of projects he takes on later on as well. He's using a lot of heavy filters here. I mean, I cannot stress that enough. This had me worried. My TV went broke. You know what I mean?
Was that weird or that off?
Constant and heavy. There are constant changes.
Like from blues to golds and reds, or like...
to blinding flashes, like weird choices in the color palette.
Gotcha.
Each time period basically gets its own color palette. I mean, we're ranging a huge amount of decades here, but the worst being present day interviews with other TV talents, which arguably I was really starving for to get some sort of confirmation. And it just looked like a nuke was going off behind them. It was like this blinding, like I had to avert my eyes from the TV. Truly insane. To me, it feels very student film, very early filmmaker, just kind of throwing everything, not to sling some dirt, but an Emerald Fennell type. Where there's just a lot being thrown on screen, and certainly each individual piece can be seen as stylish and well executed, but altogether it's kind of a little messy.
Yeah, okay.
A little amateurish. On a positive note, I would say some filmmaking reminded me a lot of Wes Anderson in a good way. Comedy will be elevated by swings of the camera or symmetry on screen, but once again, looking at the rest of his director projects, I was kind of wondering where those Wes Anderson styles went, because, I'm sure the Tender Bar doesn't feel like Wes Anderson.
I like the Tender Bar.
Listen, I've never seen it.
I actually watched it. Yeah, no, not bad. Ben Affleck does an okay. Was that directed by George Clooney?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was Ben Affleck again.
Yeah, he does a lot, more than you'd think. I think it's 11 or 12 projects.
Are you sure he did the Tender Bar?
Yeah.
And what's his face was good in it as well.
Ben Affleck?
Yeah, Ben Affleck was good in it. I enjoyed the movie.
But either way, I thought this was a very solid movie with plenty of unpacking as a conversation piece once the credits roll. I enjoy movies like this, that the conversation goes beyond it and, in part helps as a proof of concept for why we talk about movies on the podcast, these type of movies that we can unpack, and happily redeem the concept of a spy action comedy after coming off of Argyle and the crash and burn that was. But give it a watch. We're going to go ahead and give Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, 2002, a 71.
Okay, 71. Yeah, pretty good movie.
Yeah.
Excellent. I think it's right up my alley. I got to check it out.
Yeah, you specifically as well. I just because again, this sweet spot of oceans and
it's right there. Steven Soderbergh executive produced it as
no
well.
way.
Yeah, he's EP on the project.
That's great.
And I love that we're going through. We didn't hit Charlie Kaufman for a while on the podcast,
yes.
And the first one we covered when you kind of did a little bit of a study. You had said how kind of nervous you were to approach him with the prowess and how well he's received or regarded by
how highbrow it is sometimes.
Yes, big time.
Yeah.
So it's funny how far we've come where it's just like, oh, okay, great. We're doing another Kaufman film.
Right, yeah.
And sometimes he is very easy to digest a little bit. I mean, this is a pretty easy film to watch is what it seems like.
Absolutely.
And it ties in very much with our next film, too. Talk about an easy watch. But I love that Kaufman really... we're getting a full circle with him because it's not just this ultra neurotic, confusing guy. He can kind of write for the every guy as well.
Yeah. Or even fun scripts or something interesting and still have a fingerprint with it.
Yeah. So we'll get into that film for a second, folks. Before we get to those new releases, we want to remind everybody that the Daily Ratings here, we are entirely producer supported. We're not going to hit you with advertising on the podcast or the website. We want a clean experience. We don't want to just shill products we don't care about, and just try to get our subscriber downloads up that we can go pitch our downloads to an advertising company and then we get money. It's a bit of a mess. It's not very honest as well. In addition to that, we don't want to do any paywalls to this site where you need to pay to get have access to content, and we don't want any tier structures. You give $5 and you get a Q&A. You give $50 and you get a T-shirt and a Q&A and something else. It's everybody's dollar means something different to them. $5 this week could be a lot to somebody, and it could be basically nothing to somebody else. And that's why we call it the value for value model. The idea is that Vin and I are doing the podcast every week. We have the companion piece, which is the website, which is building every week. It's an awesome product. It's our own kind of IMDb, our own Rotten Tomatoes. So we put these things out there, and the idea is it value to you? Are you enjoying it? Are you using it? Are you just stopping by every week on the podcast having a good time? Do you check in every month or so just because there's one film particularly that we're hitting that you have interest in? Like I always say, it's value in your pocket. We ask you, can you give us value back in our pocket? It is the value for value model. So you go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. And through your monetary support, you become a legit producer of the Daily Ratings. You show us what value you're getting, whether it be just a fun amount, whether it's $4, $40, or $400. It could be whatever you want. We have some set donations too, like buy Vin a movie ticket. If you want to become a Godfather, donate $95. Kind of fun stuff that's related to the podcast. But really, if you just want to donate whatever amount that you want, whatever value you're getting, you can do that as well. It can be a one-time, it can be a monthly, it could be a yearly donation. You can set it up that way as well. Just like in Hollywood, when you financially support a product or a project, you become a producer of that thing. So that's why it's a legit producer credit in your name. You will be mentioned in the show notes of the episode, and we appreciate those who have produced in the past, and we hope so many of you will in the future as we kind of grow a little bit, get the name out there, and also kind of get the whole value for value model out there as well. Don't forget, when you donate, you send in a producer note, whether that be at tom.vin@thedailyratings.com. That's our email. Or whether when you send through PayPal, you can go ahead and write a little note in there. The idea is when you donate, you send us money. You take the time to write a note as well, and we're going to address it here right now. That could be questions, comments, critiques. That could be as Ask Us Anything.
Yeah, you got us hostage. If you got us hostage. That's the key. You can write into us anytime. But when it comes to actually donating in, we're going to read it on air. So,
and if you want to be anonymous, be anonymous. If you don't want to attach your name to it, all you have to do is write that in as well, and we won't say your name. We'll keep you anonymous. So that's kind of how we're setting up to do things. We are growing, and slowly, hopefully, people can kind of get the idea where you listen to all these podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and the amount of ads are getting absurd.
I was just feeling that as well. There's a small news show I watch. There was 4 ad breaks in like a 15-minute video. It's just like, I got no problem with them making money.
Sure.
I want to support creators, but at a certain
It
point,
it ruins the product more and more.
The experience.
It's shocking how much it takes you away from it, pulls you away, and some people just do it. The way people go about doing ads is really just like distasteful as well.
Yes.
I mean, it's getting really bad, and I think because advertising is really drying up for podcasts a bit, so I think people are doing more because they're getting per ad, they're making less. There's some podcasts I listen to, and I swear it's twice as many as what they were doing last year, and it ruins the product so much.
Yeah.
And it cheapens it, and it cheapens how you view the other person as well a little bit, you know? So that's why we're doing it this way. It is certainly not a get-rich-quick scheme. Hopefully, like I said, we are growing slow, and hopefully this idea gets out there a little bit more. We're not expecting one every week.
Yeah.
Certainly as we're starting to build a little bit. And like I said, we appreciate all of you producers who have produced in the past, and we hope many of you will in the future. Again, it's thedailyratings.com. Head to the donations tab, and don't forget to send that donation note in. All right, Vin, let's keep things going with our 2 newly released films. We're going to start with kind of the Netflix release before we go to the theatrical release. But this ties in to our last film. The film is called Orion and the Dark. Like I said, it's on Netflix. It's an animated kids film directed by Sean Sharmatz, who we definitely have not dealt with before.
No, yeah.
But most importantly, it is written by Charlie Kaufman.
Kids movie, yeah.
When I was going through the 2024 films, I could not believe. Double take, I said, is there another guy named Charlie Kaufman?
Yeah.
It is the real guy, the guy who did Being John Malkovich, the guy who did Adaptation.
Yep.
He's here doing this kids film. So set up Orion in the Dark a little bit for us, Finn. I did watch this one.
Oh, okay.
And let's talk about how we liked it.
Sure. So this is really the feature debut for director Sean Sharmatz, who has had a long history in animation before taking this director role.
Okay.
From working on SpongeBob to most recently being on other DreamWorks projects. This is a DreamWorks animation. DreamWorks being back again, they are coming off of 2 dead arrivals as projects from last year, that being both Rudy Gilman and Trolls 3, that I'm sure did fine
Trolls
financially.
3 did okay, yeah.
Yeah, but kind of dead on arrival as far as reception outside of the intended kids market.
So I'm just going to step in for 1 second,
Sure.
just because I did somewhat research when I found out about the film, and we talked about it on the Tom Daly episode.
Yep.
So DreamWorks picked it up as far as the American kind of production company. The real animation here is done by a studio called Micros Animation. They're a French company.
Interesting.
So Micros did basically all the animation also for Ninja Turtle movie that just came out,
Oh,
the Mutant
okay.
Mayhem
Yeah.
last summer. And then they also do some modern-day SpongeBob stuff, which I think is where this Sean Charmetz comes from.
Sure.
When I say the new SpongeBob stuff, it's that new... Have you seen any of the
I
new
don't think so.
SpongeBob animation style?
No,
it's
no.
ugly.
Oh, really?
It looks fake, cheap, and like the animation's terrible.
Interesting.
But seems like they hit it out of the park, at least for Mutant Mayhem.
Yeah.
For the Ninja Turtle thing. And this is a step up as well. So DreamWorks' fingerprints are on this, for sure, but really the hard work, the animation stuff, and style is coming from this little French company.
That's great research, and definitely understandable as far as DreamWorks, still having a huge production pipeline outside of, these like Netflix deals that they have. 2023 was disappointing for DreamWorks, but despite that, they were coming off a very strong year in 2022, being the wonderfully animated projects of The Bad Guys and Puss in Boots: Last Wish. As we always say, Piss in Boots. Like we mentioned, this was written by Charlie Kaufman, and being another notch in the belt of tackling his projects that often intimidate me, but I'm finding I like it more and more. I guess if I had to call out the one that intimidates me, the one that started the fear.
Okay.
In the theme of this movie being, fears and fear of the dark. It was Schenectady, New York with Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Right, okay.
And I just remember really not liking that movie.
And
that
that's
movie
fine.
is very highly praised.
And being John Malkovich, I think it's on this site, you didn't give it too high of a rating.
Yeah, that one as well. And that's iconic, but I was just like, nah.
I don't think I told you, but in my kind of attempt last year to start watching some older stuff, away from the podcast and just kind of...
Sure.
I did watch Being John Malkovich.
Okay.
Same feeling.
Really?
Really didn't love it all that much.
Interesting. Maybe,
Not the biggest fan.
Maybe we can tackle that head on then, because I think if you're with me on the same page, then
Good, and you didn't give it like in the 40s or anything.
Right,
I think it was like in the 60s.
Sure, but it wasn't the immense praise that
correct.
that both of those movies, Schenectady and Being John Malkovich.
But it is great that we're fleshing him out a little bit.
Yes.
He's getting more, I don't know, getting more comfortable with him, but he's a more personable guy than maybe this highbrow intellectual that's tough to get a little bit.
Sure. And I would say, luckily, this is just a kid's movie.
Yeah. Very much so.
But I really was surprised how Kaufman was still able to insert his meta style into this. In fact, the last act of this movie gets pretty insane and par for the course for our writer. Orion in the Dark is the latest Netflix animated feature with a big indie soundtrack featuring bands like Tame Impala and Flaming Lips. We follow Orion, who is a panicking hypochondriac of sorts, and basically what I imagine Kaufman's real childhood to be like. He has to get out of his own head to face his fears, the biggest of all being the fear of darkness. The entity of dark, a chunky spirit that controls darkness, comes to help him overcome this, as he is sick of everyone being scared of him all the time. And all of this is pretty straightforward until the movie pulls a Princess Bride of sorts and shows that it is actually a story being told by present-day Orion telling a nighttime story to his daughter. That's where this Kaufman spin...
Yeah.
At first, I was watching this movie, and I was like, this is almost unusually straightforward. This is almost unusually palatable. But it was that little spin, and I honestly don't know if Kaufman has a daughter or is going through, like, his being a father.
Yeah.
This felt very in line, like a writer now becoming a father is now evolving in what he's writing about.
I couldn't help but get away from my mind, like, almost, within 5 minutes of the film, it really reminds me of a kid's version of adaptation.
Oh, really?
And because this kid is so scared by everything, it really reminded me of the way Nick Cage portrayed Charlie Kaufman in adaptation. The kid's a little bit neurotic. He's freaked out by everything.
Yeah.
He's overly, he's very intelligent, but doesn't always know how to, harness that intelligence a little bit. And he runs a little bit wild.
Yep.
And then when you have this switching back and forth, this mixing of realities or times a little bit, I really liked it. I mean, it did. It had this essence of Kaufman. And he made a comment before of, he does a lot of different things, but he does put a stamp on there where there's something that's different, something that's his that you can always spot a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I think my enjoyment of this film was toned a little bit back just for... I don't know. For a little bit of the visual style, believe it or not, and despite, liking some of the other works of this kind of outsourced animated studio.
One thing so far really we liked.
True.
Granted, we didn't give Paw Patrols much of a
Did
shot,
they do Paw
but they
Patrols?
do a lot of Paw Patrol stuff.
Have we explained the Paw Patrol meme?
No,
between
we
the two
can
ones, not really a meme.
But I would say the animation wasn't anything amazing.
Yeah.
It wasn't outwardly bad. How would you compare this with Wish?
Oh. Interesting enough, both try some weird texturing to the CG models for fabrics and hair, and specifically on Orion, but both kind of being a little meh in that way.
Yeah,
so I think that's a good comparison.
Okay.
Throughout the story here, we embark to meet many other spirit characters that control aspect of the nights, such as sweet dreams, insomnia, or my absolute favorite, unexplained noises, which I really, really loved. These other spirits, I think, were the best part by far. Almost like, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but an Real Monsters from the 90s, or kind of a messed up version of the emotions in Pixar's Inside Out.
Yeah.
Personifications of these. I think this is where the comedy writing really worked for me. These characters, it dances the line of semi-messed up, and really got some laughs out of me, especially just unexplained noises. So just like
it's good.
It was such a writer thing to make out of a character. Like, I mean, it's not. No one's thinking of the spirit of unexplained noises in the dark. But it was really great. I would say this being another animated feature of Netflix and what they have funded, I found myself thinking of the exact same critique I had with 2022's The Sea Beast, despite really enjoying that film. There's just something slightly off about the voice matching to these characters. And this is, once again, kind of what took me a little bit away from the aesthetics of the project. The voice acting, the look of the film. This is mainly pointed at Richard Jewell, Paul Walter Hauser. Not a single point.
I don't think I get it. I don't get the joke. It doesn't land over here.
Paul Walter Hauser played Richard Jewell.
Oh, in Richard Jewell.
Okay. Yeah. Not that anyone watched Richard Jewell. I or any of Clint Eastwood's movies anymore.
Rated on the site.
Yeah, rated on the site.
So, but yeah, the main guy who plays Dark here.
Yeah.
I was thinking bargain bin or discount bin, but more likable, better Seth Rogen.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, okay.
100%. Exactly. I mean, we are on the same page. It's discount Seth Rogen. It feels like a character that Seth Rogen would play.
But I like this guy better.
Really?
I'm not that big as Seth Rogen.
Sure. Okay, fair. Yeah,
and the shtick that has become Seth Rogen.
Right,
it's
the
like
laugh and whatnot.
Yeah, we've been there, done that now for 25 years.
I mean, at least for Hauser, I don't know. I just, it's not that it was a terrible. It wasn't that it was a character that he couldn't play. I just felt like he maybe just didn't have the chops as far as voice acting specifically.
Yeah, it is a whole different realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a whole different medium, voice acting.
He didn't feel, I don't know, as animated as I wanted it to be.
Verbose enough.
Sure. And that, again, it just reminded me of the same exact feeling with Sea Beast with your boy.
Wow.
And I was just like, it's just not doing it for me.
Wow, really taking shots where you don't have to, I feel like. Yeah, so Sea Beast, your main things were, you loved, I think Sea Beast got like an 80 or an 82. 82 might be a little high.
No, I think it was high 70s.
Maybe 79 or something.
Yeah.
The voice lip syncing thing is interesting, and then my boy Carl Urban in Sea Beast.
Because wow, unnecessary shots.
Now Paul Walter Hauser, it's I don't think people really know. Like I wouldn't know the name. I don't even know. I can't put a face to the name.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's good that you have the Richard Jewell reference.
Yeah.
Film that no one's really cares about.
Right.
But yeah, I agree where there was something a little bit. This film overall lacked something.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why it's like, okay, this belongs on Netflix, but I still don't think it was hitting in enough ways or punched enough as a Sea Beast did. As far as visuals or overall story.
Yeah.
Because
Sea Beast also had fun action.
Right, it was
really
a pirate
fun
action film where the whole point of the film really takes place at night, involving around a small crew.
Yeah.
A small cast.
Exactly.
So you hit it on it exactly. With the characters are very reminiscent of Elemental, right? Is that what
No. Inside Out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was cute in that way, and you could really, that's where the most fun was. The movie moved the most is when you had the most personalities on screen. So, but definitely overall a smaller contained film, you know.
And maybe doomed to be that, well, it's Netflix fodder. I mean, not knocking this film as far as quality in that way, but
I know, I was hoping it was a bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, if Charlie Kaufman is attached to
sure,
it, you know.
Absolutely. And despite the outsourcing of animation, you know, DreamWorks is a huge name, you know. It's number 2, arguably.
Yeah. I will say, it almost give it a theatrical release. This is better than a lot of what we've gotten lately.
That's a fair point.
Look at Pixar. I mean, it's better than
Sure,
Lightyear.
better than Elemental.
Better than Strange Worlds.
Oh my God, better than Lightyear.
I mean, like, it's way better.
I think I will always remember the deafening silence from a theater packed with children at Lightyear. I mean, it was really eye-opening.
But in this unbelievable just tidal wave of animated films that we're getting, because there's so many different studios, this is right in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
If not a little bit better.
Right.
The problem is it's
Exactly. There's just some lacking elements to it, and hopefully, you know, we can kind of point to that for the enjoyment. I think for a kids movie, it was fine. You know, I wasn't thrilled with the art style, and somehow, in ways, it's both too simple and too complex at times.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, and in ways, it's very simple. You know, more simple than like an Inside Out, but then also it's way too complex, like a Kaufman script. So, you know, I think this concept of personifying elements wasn't a fresh enough idea for me, and even with the meta story aspect stepping into play, for Netflix watch, I think this was perfectly acceptable, worth an afternoon watching with your family. I just wouldn't expect this to land up there with the excellent animated projects we've been seeing as of late, at least the standout ones.
Yeah.
With that said, we're going to go ahead and give Orion and the Dark a 62.
Okay, 62. Yeah, I think I agree with that score. I'm not going to give it Tommy Two Shoes. Okay. Agree with the score though.
Sure.
And I think this is, as far as if you're a parent with a young kid, I think it's a great film for them.
Sure.
I think it's cute. I think it could even help, maybe even like with being afraid of the dark and stuff, because it tackles something, such a common thing that almost every single kid could relate to, and brings it into a very playful, very understandable way.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Where, you know, a lot of the stuff. Pixar movie Turning Red.
The bone to pick.
It's getting a bit of a theatrical release again.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
I think it's some sort of, I don't know, Pixar. I don't know if it's
scraping the barrel.
Well, the anniversary of it coming out. I think I don't even know,
because that's not what we do with movies. We just re-release things.
I couldn't help but remember how much I just had issues with the story, the tones of it,
the tone of the parenting.
Where this, you know, a relationship with a little boy or little kid and his fears of a dark, which is like I said, every little kid can understand. I think it's a great movie to turn on.
Sure.
And it's a very safe movie for parents, and it's actually a little bit not so cookie cutter.
Sure.
Something interesting going on.
And a credit to where the story goes with the meta elements. You know, we always talk about a good kids movie is enjoyable for all audiences, and maybe has some, you know, nods to adult aspects for them, you know, the parents to enjoy. And I feel like that's where Kaufman's, you know, touch to the script comes into play. That's the enjoyment for the parents.
Yeah, definitely. So I think 62 is right on, spot on, Vin.
Oh, good.
And I think, you know,
I didn't want to be too harsh on it, you know.
No, I really do. I think that's fair. You know, so, and again, if you got kids, it's a great thing to turn on. If you're running out of content, go ahead and turn it on because it's quite good.
Absolutely.
And if you happen to be in the room and need to watch, you're not going to be completely glazed over.
It's not going to be pulling teeth.
So, okay, all right. So that's 62 for Orion and the Dark. Let's go for this week's theatrical release. This is only in theaters right now. And this is Lisa Frankenstein, directed by Zelda Williams, Robin Williams' daughter.
Yeah.
So we saw this together in a theater.
Embarrassing so. That's a very embarrassing fact. We walked in and we said, two for Lisa Frankenstein. Two grown
I revel
men.
in it. I enjoy it. Listen, it wasn't that crowded of a theater, that's for sure. Could have sat wherever we wanted to. Lisa Frankenstein, set it up a little bit here, Vin, and let's get into it.
This is much more teen-oriented than we would normally cover on the podcast, but there's a few aspects here that did interest me. Like you said, Tom, daughter of Robin Williams, Lisa Williams directs here. This is her second feature film, actually, and definitely the contender for probably the best Nintendo commercial of all time with her father. I really loved that ad campaign. And also writer Diablo Cody, who has thrived in some time making generational kind of cult teen hits like 2009's Juno. And a handful of others.
Oh, okay.
So
Wasn't aware of that.
Look at Diablo Cody's career. Unfortunately, it's going down. I feel like Juno is kind of a interesting high point. Though I haven't seen the movie in a very long time, but. With this one, though, for Lisa Frankenstein, I hate to start off with some basic critiques, but I really do think they'll actually help the film a bit in kind of seeing who this would hit for. I would say, first off, this feels a lot more like a streaming movie than a big theater release.
Okay.
The hyper-stylized 80s nostalgia feels a bit behind the curve, but still could live in that hardcore Stranger Things crowd that will eat up anything. Wednesday being a perfect example of kind of an 80s goth style kind of coming back into it. And of that goth style, second, the clear Tim Burton goth vibes are strong with this. It's mainly a rip on Corpse Bride and Edward Scissorhands, but I think for me, that's where the movie was held back a bit, with jokes that are so telegraphed and done before. It really belonged in the 1990s. Now, that's a good point. Be a positive for the right crowd.
Right.
For the right, teen goth girl crowd. But that's where I kind of wanted to position things, though. Obviously Zelda Williams, she's coming out on her own. She's this is now her second feature debut. So I didn't want to minimize it, but really I feel like that kind of contains what this movie actually is.
I kind of get vibes of this is like early Sofia Coppola. A little bit, starting in kind of heavy, kind of girl-centric films.
Sure.
Or for maybe a younger audience, a little bit, or that teen-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know what's going to happen after this because this is not going to be financially successful. But
right.
I can see her kind of growing into like bigger and bigger projects, of her turning into a little Sofia Coppola a little bit, or finding her own thing. Sofia Coppola very much. When we did her study, you got her. The DNA of her films down a little bit. And
absolutely.
I wonder if we're going to start seeing this with Zelda movies as well.
Yeah, definitely more of a comedy focus. I would say Zelda's maybe lacking a little bit of soul in the films, where Sofia Coppola was able to, these felt so personal, all of her movies.
That's very true, too.
So,
it's more of a Greta Gerwig, like a young Greta Gerwig coming up a bit.
And especially with some of the writing spin, Cody being, coming from this type of teen comedy sphere. So Lisa Frankenstein is that teen comedy that we're referring to, and pushes its PG-13 rating for some lighthearted gore, I'll say, but is so helplessly far away from October, its spooky vibes are kind of dead on arrival. Catherine Newton is a poor girl who lost her mother and seems destined for sadness. She hangs out at graveyards and writes dark poetry. When her morbid crush comes out of the ground, played by the mute Cole Sprouse in this, she suddenly has something to live for, even if that may be going on a killing spree to get that body part for her new boyfriend. That's basically the setup here. It is, once again, I am spurred to think about Poor Things, in that the body stitching of Willem Dafoe's character was done so much better in the Frankenstein aspect of this. Acting-wise, I've mostly steered clear of Cole Sprouse and his career, especially after hearing the atrocities that Riverdale show is. Wow. I've heard some things how bad that is. He's really trying to do his best Johnny Depp, and again, not to overcompare to Edward Scissorhands, but it's what it's going after.
Our main actress then, who is
Catherine Newton.
Catherine Newton is going straight for Tim Burton's wife or ex-wife, Helen Carter. Her in Sweeney Todd vibes.
Sure.
I feel like it's a one-to-one, and she just naturally has this kind of dark, kind of witch-esque aesthetic about her. And her, even when she's just doing interviews and stuff, she has a darker
vibe to
attire
her.
and stuff.
Sure.
There's at times where they were putting Catherine Newton right in there.
Yeah.
Like pulled straight from that
Yeah,
to go
yeah.
along with the Johnny Depp thing.
Absolutely. When it comes to this kind of silent acting, it just came off as stupid, especially as they slowly try to make him hotter as the movie goes on, which got the only laugh out of me. The absurdity that this corpse is slowly getting hotter and hotter. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Catherine Newton, on the other hand, is someone I've seen a fair amount of, and I'm happy that she did get this lead role. Is her acting great? No, but I feel like it looked like she had fun in the role. She had fun compared to our Mean Girls week. How Emma Stone had fun in Easy A.
I kind of liked her.
Yeah?
I kind of thought she was good.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know. The bar is low, but I also wasn't expecting a lot. You know what I mean? So, I feel like, again, that's in the context of this feels like a streaming movie, and this feels like a Tim Burton wannabe in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
that's not necessarily bad. There can be other copycats.
Could be room for that. Yeah,
exactly. So, I would say the big issue is that the comedy just falls pretty flat at every corner. There are some cute moments for sure, but the movie tries to set up a lot of jokes, and and not outside of like me not being the intended demographic, I didn't really feel like any of them hit. It's a bit of an uphill battle for Sprouse not audibly acting, so Newton has to work double time. But like I said, this is where the goth style made jokes predictable and mostly unfunny. So many scenes fall short of even getting air to blow out of my nose. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, I don't know. It just, in that way, it felt like the style became a burden for the film a little bit. And mostly not disappointing on Zelda Williams' directing. That's mostly disappointing on the writing from Diablo Cody. And where I kind of allude that you look at that career, it's kind of been flying down to Rio. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. There we go. I'm not playing.
Very good. Very good.
No, it's not good at all. Oh, man. I don't know. What do you thought about the comedy of this?
So, yeah, that was not very funny at all. Where it was trying, I could see this movie is so meant for 13 to 16-year-old girls. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
You know what I mean? So they would find it cute and funny and really relate to the character.
Yeah.
Something we cannot do.
Right.
So, but the comedy just straight up there as a comedy,
Yeah.
mainly what it was trying to function as, doesn't work.
You're right.
There were some smirky moments. The mom is over the top. The dad, of course, is an idiot, as all dads have to be now in movies like this. Another reason why Turning Red was annoying. But
talk about a similar father.
Right. But the interlace kind of horror aspects or horror theming a little bit, mixed in with comedy, mixed into romance, and sure, the writing wasn't that good, but I think the directing of the film also was a little bit meh.
Okay.
And
fair.
I walked away coming that way with that a little bit. It fell flat in areas where I think it just needed a little bit more punch.
Yeah. But also had punch in areas that were unexpected, especially the gore.
That's true, too.
On a PG-13 movie.
It did. Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. It just fell flat in some ways. In ways, it just totally wasn't for us. But I can't imagine that no matter for whatever audience was watching this, there was missed opportunities.
Right. Absolutely. I think for where I come from as far as at least getting, I don't know, some mile markers to create some context for how to approach these films that we're not the intended demographic for.
Yeah.
I think a great comparison case is found in, once again, our Mean Girls episode, where nearly all of those films had, actually really funny scenes and genuinely funny moments, regardless of gender or target market or anything like that.
It's a solid execution on a film, when you step back and be like, that was a good movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just how we talk about with a child's animated feature, that it can hit for kids, it can hit for adults, though, and that's kind of what separates the good from the bad, or the good from the mediocre. This in just the same way. I feel like it could have separated itself in its comedic writing and its timing as well. I think by making Lisa such an outlier, it forces them to write relatable jokes that feel washed out, and then the rest is relying on shock value for the second half. I'm here to say I really do think most of it didn't work, but also was not outright bad. And more than anything, hoping we get to see a better showing from Zelda Williams on her next project. We're going to go ahead and give Lisa Frankenstein a 45.
Wow, 45, little bit worse than I thought.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I like it.
I think a 45 illustrates the
pretty
middle,
good.
the coin toss we always talk about in
Yeah.
the 50s.
No, but you're totally right to put it below the 50.
Yeah,
To actually put it on the other side of the worst side of the coin, actually.
Yep.
Because you're right, it really does fail a little bit just because it's great for 13 to 16-year-olds and that's it. You know, it's just, I don't care if we're not the proper demographic.
Sure.
Because there is a better film in there.
Yeah.
Very clearly.
Yep.
So very much the same feelings as you. I'm not going to harp on it because we walked away from it just being like, okay, all right, that was that.
It really was, yeah. The madness of it.
Two things I will highlight, though.
Okay.
One, I thought the cinematography, at least, or the coloring of the film and what Zelda did with colors. It's very pink and purpley and blue, and those colors kind of work a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of puts you in a different time a little bit.
Sure.
And I like that. So I thought the coloring of the film was kind of cool.
The Stranger Things vibes, the 80s nostalgia.
Yeah. And I think it added something to it, at least. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It put its own little thumbprint on it. Another thing was I actually kind of like Catherine Newton. I thought she is at least... I kind of liked her acting. I thought she sold this role of this senior in high school role. I don't know. I really like her. I think that she's headed places, which is nice. She seems like she's getting more notoriety.
Because she was only supporting up until this, I believe.
And it's kind of funny because, like I said, she's playing a senior in high school, and she comes across as a senior in high school really well. She seems that age. I think she's in her late 20s. She's way closer to our age.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So she's, you know what I mean? She could be getting these larger roles now. It's not like a complete up-and-comer.
Yeah.
I really liked her, though. I thought she was kind of fun and funny.
Sure.
And I think the way she carried
it's all
herself.
on her shoulders, too.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And she was having fun with the role.
Yeah.
And that was really nice to see. You know, just like that No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh, sure.
I didn't see it at the time of the podcast. I saw it later. And same thing. I think she's having fun with the role. Doesn't necessarily make a good movie.
Right.
But I like seeing the main character at least on screen. And so all props to Catherine Newton. And I hope she keeps on going a little bit.
Yeah.
And we see more of her. Another thing about it being, I'm going to go ahead and put my dad hat on real quick.
Oh, boy.
It's just like we are dealing with high schoolers. And it was more overly sexualized than I thought. And it being geared towards 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds.
Well, here's a question. Where do you think the line goes too far? Because, again, I think the gore is in that same piece. Where do you think the PG-13 rating was pushed more, in the gore or the sexuality of the film?
I have to say both, I guess. Because if you drop this down, if you drop the PG-13 and you straight PG, because it's not like, well, one scene has a lot of blood.
Yeah, I was shocked this got the PG-13.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't know, both. You couldn't have the gore and you couldn't have the sexuality of it if you drop it down a little bit for 8-year-olds to walk in there.
Right.
I don't know. So just dad hat on. That's what I have to say that. You know, and it's just very funny how I was also thinking about it this week just with Turning Red being back in theaters.
Yo, right.
It was more sexualized than I thought. And it borderline inappropriate.
Oh, wow. Dad hat secured.
But because it was just weird that we're dealing with high schoolers. I don't know if we were setting them up into like young 20s. I could even let's say like, okay, all right,
fair.
Regardless, dad hat off. That's my main takeaways.
Also, let us be clear: you're not a father either. I feel like we're gonna get
whatever.
We're gonna watch all baby movies for the for the birthday week.
But that's it. I don't know. Everything. I kind of concur with everything you said. Otherwise, I just thought she was. I thought she was stronger in the role than maybe you had thought.
Right.
And like the color. Other than that, all relatively negative to feelings about it.
Very mad, but also it probably will live once it hits streaming.
I can see it having a little bit life.
Yeah.
And not only that, streaming 4 or 5 months from now. Okay, and we're closer to October. It could having some life a little bit.
Absolutely.
I do agree that it feels like a streaming film. I mean, it's $13 million budget. So maybe they're just hoping, let's just juice it for as much as we can. How can this not make a profit? We'll see if it actually does. But okay, so 45% from you, and this just gets very simply one shoe.
One shoe,
no laces, no polish.
On
it's
a corpse.
just sitting there. I'm not angry about it. It just is what it is, kind of deal. That's what a 45% says too.
I'm right there with you.
All right, Vin. So looking at these films here, anything you want to touch on? Anything come in the coming weeks? or are we rolling credits here?
Well, like we said, again, avoiding Madam Web. Also going to be avoiding the Bob Marley biopic. But after the Fred special next week,
We're getting into it.
Exciting week with Drive-Away Dolls, and we're going to be kind of doing almost like our PTA special, a kind of an unseen Coen Brothers movies.
Yeah, love it.
With that, specifically tackling stuff I haven't seen before. And then, I mean, after that, we go into March. I mean, it's Dune, baby.
It's blockbuster time. Yeah,
it's Dune.
Dune.
Yeah, so I'm very hyped for that. Be happily rewatching, though not re-reviewing the first Dune, and I would definitely encourage anyone for that. So
excellent, Vin. Well, thank you so much. So we do have some. The movies are. It's exciting that we're getting into it now. As soon as we get into March, things are really kind of getting exciting.
We're out of the funk.
And big films that we're actually excited for, that a lot of people are excited for. Folks, if you're not the biggest fan of Fred Astaire, if you're not the biggest fan of old movies or these kinds of musicals, don't forget next week is about kind of the best of Fred, the essential Fred, we're kind of labeling it.
Yep.
So there's something there. There's something exciting there. And it's kind of fun if you want to go back on YouTube or go on YouTube and kind of look up these classic Fred Astaire numbers, kind of prep for the episode. It gets you a little exciting. It is really good dancing. It's some of the best choreography in film.
Yep.
So it's kind of cool that we're covering it. So if you're not the biggest Fred fan of that kind of films, maybe still give it a listen. There's going to be something in there for you. Like I said, I'm going to definitely kind of go through some of Fred Astaire's classic numbers, so I can visualize when you're kind of talking about it a little bit. It's awesome. It's Fred Astaire. It's some of the best dance numbers in the past 100 years of film.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Excited for next week, Finn. Thank you so much for watching these films, for stopping by today. Folks at home, we'll run it down one more time. We have Flying Down to Rio with a 64%, Body Double with a 52%, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind with a 71%, Orion in the Dark with a 62%, and finally Lisa Frankenstein with a 1 shoe and a 45%. Folks, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or get the word out and tell a friend about us. And just a reminder, folks, that the Daily Ratings is completely producer supported. We want to stay away from advertising, and we don't want to have any paywalls or tier structures or subscriptions. It's all just value for value. So, are you finding value in any of the things that we're doing here at the Daily Ratings? Then become a producer and donate whatever amount of value that is. Just go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com, and while you're there, be sure to check out the massive amount of films Vince has rated for us. So thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.